Hi, Kelly.
Hi,
Welcome.
Andrea. How are you?
So happy to have you here. I'm
Thank you
good,
for
thank
having
you.
me.
So, we're coming out of tax season, and I want to hear how that's been for you. But for anyone who doesn't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do? Introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I am a CPA based on Long Island, but we have clients all over the country. We primarily serve those in the professional services industry. So, over half of our clients are attorneys. And then we have a lot of medical, dental professionals, consultants, real estate holders, and much more. So we provide tax and accounting services. And we are currently a team of including two other CPAs, a bookkeeper, and my husband. And we are, yeah, just coming out of tax season. So shifting gears a little bit from our crazy busy to our normal busy.
Yeah. Well, I'm always trying to get my husband on board in my business. So the fact that you were able to do that is commendable.
Thank
But
you.
I want to know a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and all of that stuff before we get into your work.
Sure. So born and raised on Long Island. I went to Oceanside for, high school, and I am one of four. So I have a brother and two sisters. My father passed away when I was 10 years old, and my mom remarried and had two more two little girls. So they were always like my daughters. But
Mhm.
now they just are graduating college, which is crazy. And so I didn't have a straight path to like where I am today. Definitely a lot of hurdles, although I was always like an overachiever in school, always hustling, trying to make money, always trying to do it myself too.
Can you tell us some of the things that you did?
I used to make handbags out of old jeans when I was in middle school and sell them to kids at school.
Wow, that creative side.
Yeah, I used to tutor and babysit, like handing out flyers and always trying to do entrepreneurial things from a very young age.
Okay. So where'd you go to college?
So I started off going to Hofstra, to like the presidential scholarship over there. I wanted to go for math. I was actually going to be a teacher, and I dropped out about a
Mhm.
year and a half in, with my father passing away and just kind of like getting into the wrong mix of people hanging out with like in those early days. I dropped out and I took a couple years off and I ended up going back to school at Old Westbury. And that's where I got my accounting degree.
Okay. And is that where you met your husband, or that came later?
My husband actually was also born and raised in Oceanside, and we would have never been together if we would have known each other in high school. I always tell that to people.
Yeah.
He was like more of like, oh, I'm on the football team, and I was like in my
Mm,
work and kind of like hanging out with the alternative crowd,
okay.
getting into trouble.
You guys are cool in different ways, extreme opposite ways.
Yeah, yeah. And we met on Tinder actually, like 11 years ago. And we have
Wow.
all these mutual connections, but Tinder brought us together.
Oh my gosh. So how long have you been together?
11.
Wow. And you have two kids, right?
Yes, we have two kids. We've been married for almost 8 years, and my son will be 6 in September, and my daughter will be 3 in a week or two.
Okay. So you wanted to be a math teacher, so you've always liked numbers, even though you had the creative side, because I know creatives tend to shy away from numbers. My son actually graduated a year ago from NYU with a math degree,
Oh,
and
congrats.
his dream job, we always tease because he always says he wants to be a math professor at Columbia. And I don't know if you've seen, I forgot the name of the show, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Have you seen that show?
Yes, yes. Great
Yeah,
show.
her dad is a math professor at Columbia. So we always say like that's his dream job. But he definitely didn't get that from me, his love for numbers. So when did you work for an accounting firm before you started your own? How did that end up happening?
Yeah. So I worked for another firm for almost 10 years, and there were two partners there, an older guy, a younger guy, kind of like in the accounting field. There are a lot of marriages and divorces when it comes to partnerships, which I I guess is frequent in a lot of different fields. And from day one, they were promising me to be a partner there, treating me like, oh, you're like a daughter to me. This is going to be our firm. And I definitely did a lot, provided a lot of value, tried to bring the firm into like the current technology, and was practically running the firm before I left. But like once there was a lot of stuff that happened in between, and I'm sure, if you follow me, you can hear it on other outlets. But long story short, one of them ended up selling half the practice to the other, and I stayed on for a little bit longer, but I had my first child in 2020. So COVID era, working from home, and, January of 2021, they're like, yeah, like, come back to the office. And I was like, no, thank you. Like, I'm working really well from home. I mean, I had a sitter for my son. And I went back to there for 9 months, and they were like, you're a mom now. Like, you're not going to want to run the firm. And I'm like, yeah, nothing's changed. Like, I've been, building a lot on the sidelines for years. And I had already started a company. I had been building my brand online for a couple of years. And I'd been in the midst of making my own website because I felt it was hard to really market myself within somebody else's firm if my name really wasn't on the door. So I had all of these little things in place, and then a particular situation came up, an ethical situation, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm putting in my notice tomorrow. I've kind of been putting things in place, but like the worst case scenario, I could go work for someone else. But like, I have full faith that I can do this. June 2021, left, and here we are 5 years later.
Well, congratulations. And I've been watching your growth. Your business is really doing well, taking off. Do you primarily work with other business owners or individuals? Is it an even mix?
It's mostly other business owners, but we do have some individuals in the mix that need, have higher planning needs, more complexities, but we don't really do like one-off 1040s, which is the individual tax returns, because we just feel like we can't provide enough value if we're not planning with them throughout the year.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think stresses business owners out the most when it comes to the financial side?
I think it's less about what's going on in the business and more about what's going on with them personally, and like what their habits are and their beliefs are about money. We have most of our clients, our business clients, we're meeting with them either like on a quarterly basis or 3 times a year. And we're at this point of the year where I am playing a little bit of catch up because we don't do that during tax season. And it's really eye-opening to see how I can go from one meeting to the next and have 2 like just completely different perspectives on how people deal with money. And we have the conservative people who like don't want to touch anything in their bank account. And then I have other people who think it's just like whatever comes in their bank account is theirs.
No planning for anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you went there because I wanted to talk about the emotional side about money. And what were your beliefs growing up? Like, did you always did it change along the way? I want to know a little more about that.
That's a great question. I'm not sure anybody's ever asked me that, but I love that. So I think that I came from 2 very different perspectives because my dad was very much like me, like always hustling, had his own business, like was into numbers, and was larger than life kind of attitude, like always wanted the best for everybody, always wanted, the nicest things, and was able to pay for it, and, from like my mom's side of things, or maybe my stepdad's side of things, I think it was a little bit of, the opposite. Like, well, we have to work really hard for our money and, we can't spend on this and we have to be like more of that like frugal mindset. Like there's never enough. Like everything's so expensive. Why do And so two very different perspectives definitely put a little bit of a battle in my mind. But I think like my attitude is embodying my dad's spirit for sure.
Do you feel that in your business? Is that what you carry him throughout? That's really sweet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so once you got married, did you have any challenges, or was your husband also on the same page with
So
an abundant mindset?
he's always been behind me in my business and like rooting for me and having full faith in me, but he also comes from a mindset, this old school mindset, which like honestly most of us do. Most of the United States, comes from this, and it's really comes down to a bunch of different things. I mean, history, right?
Yeah.
And the media,
Yeah.
and people just love to say like, oh, this is so expensive, there's never enough, like, we can't afford that.
Recessions. Yeah.
And so we together as a team have done a really good job of shifting that mindset.
Yeah. And what are you teaching your kids? How do you talk to them about money?
So obviously they're still very young, but I
Yeah.
do try to tell my son, first, he's very lucky. Like we get to pick him up from school every single day. Like we have a lot of flexibility. Like, sometimes I want him to know that like we can't take that for granted. And sometimes I have to hop back on the computer at night and I'm answering emails. Like I want him to understand that like I work hard for what we have. But, the school is just so different nowadays because he came home with something from school. He's in kindergarten and it said something about like abundant mindset versus scarcity mindset.
It's deep for a kindergartner.
Right? And I was like, so tell me about this scarcity mindset. And it's like, yeah, I want him to live in the positive and I want him to understand that, like, he still has to work hard for what we have, like,
Yeah.
but also that he deserves it.
I like that. You are in our subscription gifting program, and you're very generous with your clients and the people around you. Where does that come from?
Great question. Just in my like heart of hearts, feel that we need to give to others like without expecting receipt. Like I want to share the abundance. I am a true believer that like what we do, the positivity and the support that we give others comes back to us in other ways. Like I'm not necessarily looking for a gift from somebody else, right? But by giving, like, I just want to brighten someone's day. I want to show them the amazing things that you put in all of our baskets and the things that, like, we've collaborated on. I want to share joy with others. I think that's really what it comes down to.
And this is why I've told you this so many times. You're my ideal client because your gifting philosophy is you're just so generous and you do it with such heart, and it's such a pleasure working with you. And we also know each other from Spirit and Soul Studio. We work with Tiffany, and accounting and spirituality don't seem like two worlds that necessarily go together. Did you grow up with a religion, or were you always spiritual?
So I was raised Catholic, but I have always been drawn to other things. Like I remember in high school, like being really into astrology or discovering The Secret. And like now I feel like it's a more of like a universal faith, like faith in the universe, faith in God, whatever you want to call it. Like I just believe that there really is a higher power and something bigger than us. And, it boils down to being a good person and truly like being a good person and thinking good things.
So is that what you also teach your kids?
Yes, yes. I mean, they will
Okay.
probably also be raised Catholic because of family.
Okay, they're
Um,
baptized and everything, like you
yes.
do all the
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I was
Um,
also born and baptized Catholic, so was my husband. But along the way, like my dad still very much practices. And funny enough, my mom is super spiritual. She does all the Reiki, all the levels of everything. I don't
wow,
even know what she does anymore because it's just so far beyond anything I know.
that's so cool.
Yeah, so she lives in France, but her spiritual teacher is in Australia. and she's going there this year. And fun fact about my mom, Australia is the only continent she hasn't been to. So I'm like, look at that, that you get to go.
Wow, that's
Uh,
cool.
yeah, but she also was Catholic. Her dad's background is Italian, so that's where that comes from. So we were all born baptized Catholic and then branched out to different things. I am more spiritual. I have a sister in England who's Muslim, and another one who lives here who still maintains that she's Catholic, but can also get spiritual. So, I think it's just, and I see this for you, it's not putting a ceiling on what's possible. It's just going beyond and just understanding that we all are universal energy.
Absolutely.
And so how does that show up in your business, you think?
So it that there's a fine line with that and who we're working with, but we do, really try to cure our clients. As you cure
Mm,
your beautiful baskets and you handpick all of, the best types of products, like we really
mhm,
try to pick the clients that are going to work best with us, like based on what they're doing, what business they're in and their personalities. Like,
mm,
if your personality is not a good fit for us, then I'm not taking you on as a client. And, like, you can try to understand that when you have a discovery call with a client but sometimes it doesn't always come through. So, like, we are quick to let people go. I've gotten really good at firing people.
okay.
But like in
That's
terms of what?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's something you struggled with
Well,
before?
it is uncomfortable to say, like, hey, we can't do work for you anymore. Like, and I'm going to lose this monthly fee or whatever the case is. And like having that kind of confidence when you're supporting your family, like, it's hard because there's a lot of other accounting firms out there that just end up putting up with bad clients because they're getting a great fee from them. And that's not my reality. But I think because we work with the clients that we want to, I'm able to guide them the way that I want to as well. And we're not just talking about numbers, on a balance sheet or on your tax return. We're talking about, like, hey, like, we can do this, or you can proceed in, a number of different ways, but it's really going to be based upon you, what your habits are, what your goals are, and we need to discuss those so I can help you get to that.
Yeah, yeah. It all really, ties together. Your emotional state and how you look at money, and then when your clients come in. So who would you say your ideal client is?
My ideal client is obviously somebody in the professional services world. So, like, let's just say attorneys, because that's really our main focus. Would be attorneys, and they are probably doing $500,000 of more in sales. They're looking to expand. They're tech forward, because if you're not tech forward and you're afraid of everything and you're on the worry go round, I like to say, like, that's not going to be a good fit. And yeah, people who are willing to use our systems and put in the work. Because if you're going to
Mhm,
complain about the same things over and over again and not actually do the work to make the change, it's not going to
mhm,
work for us either. I can't have the same conversation every year for 3 or 4
mhm.
years because you can't pay your tax bill because you're buying things that maybe you don't need.
So the good point. Walk me through when you onboard a new client, what that process looks like.
So we have a very specific lead process. When somebody wants to be a client, they can make an inquiry on our website or they reach out to us via email. We have a calendar link that has, a bunch of questions, a fee of $150 for the consultation, and we ask for copies of your tax returns before we even have the call. And we go through them and we put them in our system just to see, if there are any errors. We give feedback. We want to have the most, like, quality time on that initial 30-minute consultation as we can, because it doesn't have to be, hi, my name is Kelly, this is my firm. Yes, I'm going to introduce myself and tell them how we run things, but, like, Google has a ton of stuff for all of
Yeah.
us, right? Like, look at the reviews, see what we offer. Let's get down to the nitty gritty, address some of your questions. Then we give them a proposal based on their actual work. We may review their books, we review their tax returns, obviously. They know very clearly the scope of the services that we're going to be providing and the fees, which are usually a monthly fee. So, onboarding, we get an engagement letter, a fee, and give them an onboarding questionnaire so they can give us access to everything, clean up whatever we need to do. And then we kind of it takes, a month or two really to go through, set everything up, because people don't realize it is a lot on them too. Yes, we need access to all of these things. We need you to send this. We need you to clarify things. This is a team effort here.
Right. How far back do you go with the tax returns?
Usually we look at 2 years. And, if there's something that's really bad, then I may request more to see if we have to amend anything. But typically
So
it's 2 years.
okay. Are you open to challenges when you see something that looks like this is going to be a tough one? Yeah. Do you shy away or do you lean into that?
So it depends. It depends on the challenge. A lot of times people come to us and their books are a mess and they don't even realize that their books are that much of a mess.
Yeah.
People don't realize, how bad it can be. But there are a lot of bookkeepers out there, or there are a lot of people who think that they can do it themselves, and they don't realize, hey, they're missing income, or maybe you need to charge for sales tax and you're not doing that, or, whatever the case is. We've seen it all. As long as the clients are willing to pay a fee and do the work, like we said, we usually lay out several options. Hey, if we clean this all up, this might just be an unlimited amount of time. I can't really give you a fee, but I'm going to have to bill you hourly. Or we can start this from scratch at a certain date, and it may be better moving forward. But not everybody has that scenario. And, recently, about 2 years ago at this point, somebody came to us, and we have some sad situations. The client's husband was a dentist, and he developed dementia. And the wife actually had cancer, and he hadn't filed his tax returns for 5 years, 6 years for a business in the city.
Oh my goodness.
No books. And we had to recreate everything for 6 years. And
how long did that take you?
It took us a couple months. I'm going back and forth with the banks and the wife and trying to get answers on certain things. And then, we filed everything, but then it took another 2 years basically to go through all the correspondence and get it settled between the IRS and the state, because they are different, with processing times. So, 2 years later and probably $50,000 later, it's been all settled. But, sometimes it takes time and effort and a lot of money to get things closed.
Yeah, I can't even begin to wrap my mind around what that entails for you. I'm trying not to identify anymore as someone who doesn't like numbers, because this doesn't benefit me. But that's been my story for so long. I am definitely one who I have a hard time, looking at the bank account and all those things. So just the fact that you even can filter through all of that and help is remarkable to me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure your client was grateful.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Not only are you very intentional with who you work with and how you work, you're so thorough. I have a friend who is also a business owner, and she was saying for the last couple of years, her accountant has been filing her taxes as an LLC, but she's an S Corp, and the accountant is the one who actually created that. And yeah, so it's it was a mess, and they had to redo things, and now she has a new accountant.
Wow.
Yeah. So what do you see people showing up with the most though? Did they need help with?
A lot of people need help with cash flow. And people find it difficult to prepare for the tax bill and keep their debt down and come up with, the right amount that they should be taking out for themselves on a monthly basis. And we have different buckets, right? We don't want to drain our bank account down to zero. We want to make sure that the business has enough cash to sustain and build over time. But at the end of the day, you need to be compensated too. Do you have enough to pay your own living expenses without racking up debt? And can you also pay your tax bill on top of that? And there's a lot of different buckets that I think people get a little too comfortable with sometimes. That they start only making a minimum payment on a credit card, whether it's personal or business, and then you start carrying some debt. Not all debt is bad. I think that there's good debt and there's bad debt, but sometimes, we take a look at things and we're okay, this credit card has a 27% interest rate. we really need to work on this and target this. And people have this mindset like, oh, I'll get to it. Oh, my parents always had credit card debt. It's fine. And it's like, well, that affects a lot of different things. First of all, you're just throwing money out the window and your credit score's not great. So
So
that's
you
like,
work on getting all of that corrected but so then how do you, aside from just all of the financial aspect, how do you help the clients with the mindset? Because that obviously is the first thing that has to change before you could correct anything else. And it doesn't feel to me like something like a typical accountant would even, venture to touch. But how do you do that?
so a lot of difficult conversations.
Hmm.
Asking first of all, like what works for you, because sometimes, I start to unravel things sometimes as we have these conversations. Like, well, I just found out that a client I met with last week, he's got some growing business credit card debt within his business, and then I found out that he had like $80,000 in personal credit card debt, and I was like, you've been a client of me for like almost 3 years of mine, and that we never talked about that, and you're
Yeah.
talking about paying off some other things, but meanwhile I would like to see you pay off this credit card debt. And when I started shifting the narrative a little bit and saying like, hey, this is costing you $2,000 a month here, like you shouldn't just be sitting on cash collecting no interest when you are paying this credit card down. And like at first, sometimes it bothers people. It's a little unnerving when you start talking about money and emotions. Like you don't always get the best reaction. And it was a little uncomfortable on the call. And I always live by the saying like, difficult conversations, was it easy conversations, difficult life,
Mhm.
difficult conversations, easy life.
I like
And,
that.
after that call, he actually texted me and was like, sorry if I was like a little bit abrupt. Like, I understand now. I appreciate you bringing this up, which is like 9 times out of 10 that's the reaction that we get.
Yeah. Yeah. I think going through it, the process is just it's uncomfortable, but then the light at the end of the tunnel makes it all worth it.
When we get called out on our own shit, it's unnerving. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
somebody to tell me what to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, you're doing the work, you're doing the spiritual work, so you know all the deep-rooted fears that people have and the things that have happened in their life and how it affects just everything, especially when you start a business. I think that's the best way for self-reflection and self-development. It's the best path, or it's the path that you can't avoid once you start a business, working on yourself, because the two go hand in hand, as you know.
Absolutely.
Well, I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
And what's the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make, you think?
Not having full faith and trust in themselves.
And how do you think what's a first step do you think they can take?
I see way too many people just like waiting for like the right thing to happen, or like asking too many people for advice. And like if you're going to go for it, I feel like you just need to go for it. Like put your big girl pants on and make the decision. Like yeah, you can, poke around and learn and see what the best thing is going to be, but like at the end of the day, you really need to just trust your gut and go for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. What instantly gives you peace of mind?
Probably just like laying in my bed at night with my kid. What?
Do you co-sleep?
Not by choice.
Oh,
My son actually sleeps in his own bed, but my daughter is still at 3 years old, still gets up every single night. So, she
yeah.
usually will start in her bed and then come into mine. But like at the end of the day, just like settling down, being in my own little bubble with my
Yeah.
family is gives me the most peace of mind.
Yeah, you take your mind off of all the numbers and now you're with the most important people in the world. And what does success feel like to you now?
That is an evolving question, because, I do have the type of personality that like is like, okay, what's next? Okay, like
Hmm.
I did this. Now we have $1 million firm. Like, what does next year look like? I have
Hmm.
my beautiful family. I'm so fortunate. I have a boy and a girl. Like, okay, like what does our house situation look like? So personally, success for me is like the freedom that we have and being able to recognize the mindset that's required to do it.
Yeah. And
But
that work is ongoing.
yeah.
So, like, describe to me your, I mean, I guess this would be way in the future, but your ideal life. If you're not doing this, what do you see yourself doing?
Well, I'm definitely living my like ideal life right now, and I'm so grateful for everything that we have. I think, I am a visionary, so like I said, I'm always kind of thinking about like what's going to happen next and how I can help more people. And I think at the end of the day, like it's about supporting other business owners, but also I do support a lot of other firm owners and people who are in the accounting space.
Yeah.
And I've scaled that quite a bit over the last couple of years, where it's turned into, I was taking a lot of like one-off calls with people and like, saying like, hey, look, I did this. I started my firm. You can do it. Like, it doesn't have to be the same way it's always been done.
Yeah.
Come to the light side of accounting. And
Yeah.
then it's right now I run a free mastermind monthly. And we have like 400 or 500 people on our mailing list. And we have a lot of people who show up consistently.
Yeah.
And we kind of now are developing that into more of a paid consultation, where we're doing like implementation and like quasi coaching and advisory for accountants. So, obviously we can't do the work for free, right? You've got
Yeah.
to charge your certain amount so you can make money because you provide so much value. Well, I feel like we can provide so much value to others who are starting their firms or need assistance. So that's kind of like the next thing for us.
Wow, that's very cool. So how do you have information about your mastermind on your website?
Yeah, so it's not on our website actually, but it's definitely on LinkedIn. You can go to fiscalminds.com if you want to register for it. And then basically,
Okay.
you get like a notification twice a month, like, hey, we're going to meet on this day. And, we show up to a place where we all can collaborate and talk about what we're doing with our firms and, the hottest technology and what you're doing with Claude and all that fun stuff.
So this is purely for accountants or just business owners?
Yes, just for accountants.
Just for accountants. Okay. Well, you shatter all the stereotypes of accountants because you are an accountant that does not have the personality of cardboard. You're very stylish and even just the aspect, and I guess you are now a math teacher. Isn't that what you wanted to be? So you're teaching people all
This
the
is
time.
true.
So you are also a teacher.
This is true.
And I mean, I hesitate to ask the work-life balance question, but I know, you're raising the two kids, you have the marriage, you have the business. Do you outsource any of that? Or I don't know if you've been following Emma Greed's tour or if you've read her book, but she actually, took a hit in the public eye for saying that she's a 3-hour mom. Yeah, she's a CEO, she's operating at a top level, and she said 3 hours is what she can give her kids realistically. So how do you view that? Like, do you outsource like any of your cooking or the childcare?
Great question. I do think it's more of like a harmony. It's definitely not balanced. Like some days it's more, work than others. Some days it's more family than others. But like it is really important for me to be present with my kids.
Mhm.
Kind of previously mentioned, like we pick up our kids every day from school. We drop them off at a babysitter at like 7:30 in the morning and we're picking them up by 3 o'clock. So we get to spend the afternoon with them, dinner, put them to sleep. But, I also travel sometimes and go to conferences and need to learn new things. And I do have to be away from them for a couple of days at a time, which is difficult, but, you need your village to help you out.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky, to have my husband and our parents to assist in those types of things. But my kids also know, like during tax season, like I always say like, hey, I don't work crazy hours, and I don't. A lot of people are working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, and like maybe I'm working 45, 50 hours, but it doesn't look like I'm working, 8 to 8 Monday through Friday. It's more like, okay, I might work from 9 to 3 during the day and then hop on the laptop for 2 hours at night, which then
Mhm.
my kid, my son Franco, he just loves to like push my buttons sometimes. And he's like, Mom, you're always working. And I'm like, dude, you literally have no idea. Like, I am not always working. I get to pick you up every day. And like, I have to help my clients. I try to position it like that.
Yeah. You said he's 6, he's 7?
He's going to be 6 in September.
Well, it's that age, right? They want all the attention, and then comes a time when they want none.
Yeah.
Uh, how is he with his little sister?
They are pretty good together. I see the way that his mind works. And then, I'm
Yeah.
sure, like how crazy it is to watch your kids and like how they develop and like what traits they have from you or your
Mm-hmm.
significant other or your other family members.
Yeah.
But he's pretty good with her, and he's pretty good with numbers, and he's pretty good with being compassionate with other people, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah. Well, my kids are polar opposites. My son he's the type, he internalizes things, and my daughter is precocious. She is very outspoken, and she'll tell you exactly how she feels on the spot. And with my son, Aiden, you kind of have to dig, and he's not necessarily a big sharer, but yeah, but it's I love it because it keeps it interesting.
Absolutely.
So I really enjoyed our conversation, Kelly. It was such a reminder that business is not just about money, but it's about building a life that supports you. And you seem to be doing that so well. And I'm enjoying following your stories on Instagram. And I never thought that anyone could make accounting look fun and interesting, but you have somehow. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you for continuing to support my business too, because I really it's been such a pleasure working with you for the last year.
Thank you. And likewise, I'll speak to you soon. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I'll see you in the next one.